Welcome to the podcast, Discover the Difference, brought to you by C3. I'm your host, Jamie Reed, alongside the not-so-good fly fisherman and often moose bait, Gabriel Earl. Today on the show, we have Matt Bertke of the Chelatna Lake Lodge. I was actually introduced to him by another guest of ours, Nick Hardwick, when we were searching for a very, very special place to go experience the outdoors in Alaska. And thank God Nick introduced us to Matt, because we had the most special experience over 5 days up there. We were fly fishing, we were flying helicopters up to lakes that are untouched by man. We learned how to play the drinking game hockey. We got iced several times. And if you don't know what getting iced is, you'll learn in this podcast. But Matt is just this dynamic personality, and every aspect of the experience and the lodge when you go up there oozes his personality. He's a good looking, young, vibrant person that bears and men and women and fishermen and people that just want to go bird watching all gravitate to experience the great Alaska outdoors. So I hope you enjoy this podcast with Matt and you get to take a trip and experience it yourself. All right. We're coming virtually with Matt Bertke, the owner of the Chelatna Lake Lodge, from the deck of his resort up in Alaska. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on after the once in a lifetime experience that Gabe and I had when we come up and visited you. We knew that you had to come on the show.
Yeah, I'm glad you thought of me.
So Matt, you're calling from I think you're on a satellite phone from one of the most remote places in Alaska. How have you held up this?
That's right. It's been a good winter. It's a good winter. I'm calling in through the satellite internet phone. So one of the downsides is it has a slight delay. So we might end up kind of tripping on each other. But right now it sounds to be pretty good. But yeah, I'm just sitting on the deck right now, enjoying the 60-degree weather, watching snow melt. And I had a really good winter. Got a lot of snow machining in, and no complaints overall. It actually was a fairly warm winter too, so we didn't freeze too much in the building.
What does that mean, warm winter, and where you're from?
I think the coldest stretch we had this winter, we had about a month of 25 below, but that's actually pretty good for up here because, like a cold month up here would be closer to 35, 40 below zero.
Is there even a difference when you get to that temperature?
Not really, no. It seems like it's all the same. But, the main difference is in the wintertime, me and Emily move into the main lodge. And when we don't have guests here, we kind of foam off we put like blue foam insulation, and we shut off the dining room. And then we actually put it in a lot of the windows too, just so we're not losing heat. But the main difference between 40 and 20 below is just the difficulty of keeping the house warm. And the way we heat the house when no one's here is it's all wood heated. And you guys have seen the lodge. It's a pretty big building with high ceilings. So, the wood fire heater takes a lot. We actually have to, a lot of times, if it's below zero, we have to set our alarms every 4 hours throughout the night to go down to the basement and stoke the fire.
Wow. So what are you doing, besides sleeping, and when it's 25 below?
Well, I still do a lot of logging in those temps, and, I'll even go snow machining, for shorter distances. But, you guys probably saw it when you were up here, but all the trees around the lodge just got annihilated by spruce beetles. And so I'm kind of terrified right now of just fire hazard, and also just trying to get them down because they're pretty ugly, and I just need to get them all taken down. So I was pretty active this year, at least a tree a day, if not, on good cutting days, probably more like 7 or 8 trees a day. Cold part of the winter, like when it gets down to anywhere between 0 and 40 below, we're burning a full tree a day. we call it feeding the beast because it's just constant. You can't ever let it go hungry.
Got to feed the furnace. Well, let's jump out of winter time, because we came to know you during the summertime. And ironically, one of our prior guests was Nick Hardwick. And I remember talking to Nick when he said he was going to go take this Alaskan experience that Rivers put together for the offensive line. And I asked him how he felt about it. He's like, I don't really know what to think. I'm not an outdoorsman. I'm not sure how to evaluate this. And then on the flip side, he came back and he said, it was a once of a lifetime experience. I had the most amazing time ever, and I would recommend anyone to do it. And so when Gabe and I were trying to think through an experience to create for some of our clients, it came to mind, and Nick put us in touch to come up there. And I just want to say thank you personally to start, because I think I can say on behalf of Gabe and I both, it really was a once in a lifetime experience. And I'm curious, I mean, do you strive for that? Do you think your guests all feel that, or did something magical just happen for Nick and Gabe and I?
No, that's definitely what I strive for. And yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I really appreciate hearing that. And, also thank you guys for putting that trip together. That was probably one of my favorite groups that's came up in, a couple years. You guys were a lot of fun, but, we certainly try to, go above and beyond. And, one thing, we're just kind of a unique location here. There's not too many places like this. And so, I think, for a lot of people, it is kind of a once in a lifetime experience.
What is it that makes it so unique, you think? I mean, I have my own opinion on it, but I just wanted to get your perspective.
Sure. Well, the location, it's just kind of a different world up here when you get off of the road system. And, basically what I'm running up here is like a little mini town. We generate our own power. Everything has to be self-sufficient up here. And at the same time, we're still a small lodge, so we're not one of like the big tourist trapped areas. So, each group is we customize each trip to each group that shows up, depending on what it seems like they want to do. I guess that might be a better question for you guys. What did you think seemed different? It definitely is not kind of the cookie cutter run of the mill style resort.
Well, that's what I loved about it, because our group was big enough. We bring two different planes in. One plane is landing on the lake, a float plane, the other on that little strip by your resort. And as you're coming in, you can see Denali off in the distance. And, we were so excited to get there. We brought a group of people who either were, hardcore fly fishermen, or people who had always dreamed of, having an experience like that where they get to learn fly fishing. And here they're going to have it in this amazing Alaskan setting. And we were smoked out that first day, or it was so heavy that you recommended we take the helicopters on our first full day and go up and tour Denali. And I just remember like landing up on that ridge and, us going and diving into the lakes and swimming in 32-degree water. I mean, that set the stage. And I remember thinking, for the guys that were hardcore fly fishermen, like, this is going to maybe not meet their expectations because they're there to fish. And instead, the very first day, we're flying helicopters up to ridges and swimming in glacier lakes and just doing things that were different than what we told them. I remember being fearful that maybe they're going to be disappointed in this. And that night I remember coming back, and I think that's when we went pedal to the metal, and we're like, this is an amazing experience, and whatever you brought into it thinking it might be, it really didn't matter, because that day was so magical.
Well, they were a little bit disappointed by the skinny dipping that you did, Jamie.
We don't need to there was shrinkage. It was 32 degrees. We don't need to go there.
Yeah, we don't need to. Yeah. Yep. But going back to the helicopter thing, that's a pretty cool option that is actually, it's fairly new to Chelatna Lake Lodge. And I don't know if you prefaced this already, but, I'm a second generation lodge owner. So I bought the lodge from my parents, who actually bought the lodge the year I was born. And so they were running it as way more of a, it was like fish grind kind of lodge. You woke up in the morning, and they actually had a whole fleet of airplanes that would fly you all over the valley. But, the main objective was not to see the sights or, take it in. It was more to come back and fill your freezer. And obviously that's way different now, because I do mainly mainly catch and release fishing for trout. Although we do catch salmon and stuff as well. But that whole helicopter option was something that we came up with, probably about 4 years ago now. And, the first one I went on, I grew up here and, spent my entire life looking at these mountains, and that helicopter option is just unreal. And I don't think anybody has been disappointed in that one yet. It's just kind of a mind blowing experience. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing. And, I still have pictures of, seeing, cruising around and seeing black bears and giant moose, from the helicopter, which was pretty spectacular.
We were in a river back behind the lodge, and when we were being escorted back to the lodge, I remember saying to the pilot, "Hey, I really want to see a moose. What are the odds that could happen?" And he's like, "Well, let's go see if we can find you a moose." And we're flying over that ridge that's out across from the lodge, and it just looks like a bunch of green and brown to me. And he's like, "Oh, I see a moose." And he just circles around this thing. He's like, "Let me get a little lower and see if he'll come out of the bush down there." And he gets down, and this thing stands up. I don't know what the rack was like.
The big ones are, the big ones are like 60, 70. I think once you get in the records, you're like 80 inches.
Yeah. Well, it felt like it was a record to me, or maybe in my memory of it was. But it felt like he was just daring us to land and like get out and fight him or something, and it was just so cool.
Yep. There's a ton of those up there. I was riding around in a plane one time with one of my buddies, and we saw these two grizzly bears running, so we turned around to go fly and take a closer look. And he kind of got down. He was flying, and he got down real low. And those two bears, I think they were young, were kind of running away from the plane a little bit. And then once we got really close, the one in the back turned around and jumped and swatted at the airplane. I've never seen anything like that.
So how did you get connected with this lodge? I know you mentioned this is something your parents purchased. How did they get it? How did they get out there, and what was their reason for that?
Yeah, I think it was kind of a dream of theirs for a while. And my dad actually was doing a whole bunch of guided trips, without a home base, like, for example, guided river trips and all sorts of stuff around the state. And then at the same time, he was also selling remote real estate. So he would kind of fly around, assess the properties, and then list them. And then, so Chelatna Lake Lodge came up for sale. I don't even think it was really officially for sale, but I think he heard that the guy might be interested in selling, and he came and took a look, and then basically decided to sell the real estate company and buy the lodge. So that's how they found it. And, it was pretty fortunate for me because they actually bought it in 1988, and I was born in 89. So I've kind of just grown up with this my entire life. And, I spent every summer up here of my life. I did go back to Anchorage for the winter times and for school and everything like that. But I was lucky enough to get to come out here June, July, and August. And, my parents were too busy running the lodge to really pay attention to me. So I kind of just got turned loose in the woods like every boy's dream.
Your parents operated it differently in another way too, right? They left during the winters when you were a kid, and you left Alaska when you were a kid, and you're making a choice to stay through winter, right? And what's behind that?
Yeah, that's right. So they they used to hire caretakers in the wintertime, and that was for a couple different reasons. So, and we would actually go back to Anchorage. I did go to school out of state in Tennessee and Colorado. But so they would hire caretakers to, one, just kind of watch the property and make sure nothing bad was happening up here. We have a lot of stuff kind of spread out. So, we wouldn't want anybody to kind of stop in on a plane or a snow machine and kind of get to pick through it. Also, the fire needs to be kept going in the main lodge for the entire winter because the well is actually in the basement. So all the water that goes to the entire lodge is pumped out of a well below the main lodge. And if we let that fire go out and let the building freeze, it would be a really bad deal. So they would always hire caretakers, and they did that for, 25 years just about. And actually, before I even bought the lodge, my dad was kind of acting like he didn't really want to sell it to me and was hoping to maybe find a different buyer. And I got the impression the lodge was probably going to sell pretty quick, and I just wanted the opportunity to caretake. I've always thought it would be, a pretty amazing experience because in the summer there's a lot of other traffic around, and obviously the lodge is full and booming. But in the wintertime, you really get this entire beautiful place to yourself. Like there's no other residents here on Chelatna Lake. So we get the whole place to ourselves. So I volunteered to do that for him because I was thinking it was going to be one of the last years it might be possible. And then, at that point, I think maybe he realized how serious I was about the lodge and, how much I loved it. And we were able to actually strike a deal, and I ended up buying it right before my first winter up here. And that was,
that's awesome.
5 years ago, I think. So I'm just now finishing my fifth winter.
So Matt, you went to school in Tennessee, left Alaska. What was the big draw? It's pretty dramatic to go from, living in the lower 48, and then coming back to, living full time and deciding to, go all in on this. What was it that drew you back?
Yeah. So I went to, Tennessee. I actually went to a boarding high school. So I went down there for 3 years, and then after that, I went to Colorado State University in Fort Collins, Colorado. And, Tennessee, when I was down there, I really missed the mountains, and I missed the mountain sports and, things like snowboarding, snow machining, all the winter sports, fly fishing. And so that was why I decided to go to Colorado State. And in Colorado, Colorado's great, but it doesn't really compare to Alaska in a lot of ways as far as like the actual outdoor experience. And so really, I think going to Tennessee and going to Colorado really made me appreciate how cool it is up here a little bit more. I've heard that from other people I know who have gone to move out of state for, even short periods of time for like a year or something. When you grow up with it, you don't really think much of it. And then once you go down and, get out of it for a little bit, it's a little easier to see exactly how cool it is up here. So, so then I moved back to Anchorage after school, and I was working at Regal Air, which is the air taxi that flew you up. So I was working there, and I bought a plane, and I was kind of doing a whole bunch of just flying all over the place and exploring the state. And then, truthfully, I kind of realized that one of the coolest places in this state is, my backyard here at Chelatna. And, then I decided that I was really serious about taking over the lodge, and I actually had been for a while, but I didn't really think it was going to work out. And then it kind of just all magically lined up. The stars aligned right in the end. And, pretty much was, my lifelong dream come true.
That's awesome. I want to ask a two-part question, but I want to stage it with a story because we went fishing, I think on the third day, where it's on down the lake a ways toward Denali on the right there where the river meets the lake. And the guides stop and they walk me out to the edge of the lake and they go, "Don't walk any further, because if you do, you're going to step off a cliff and your gators are going to fill and you're going to be 500 feet down and no one will ever find your body, or something dramatic like that, where I was like, holy smokes, I'm going to move 2 steps back and I don't care if I catch a fish now. And so my question is, you're in an area that has a lot of risk. So have any bad things ever happen with people like us that come up there that are naive? And or what's the dumbest thing that somebody has done who you're responsible to caretake for?
That's a good question. I might have to think about the dumbest thing here, and I'll try to come up with something before we get done here. As far as bad things happening, we actually have had pretty much a perfect safety record. The only thing that did happen is actually right where you're talking about. And we had one of our employees, and this was, back when I was a kid and my parents were running the place. It was his day off, and he went down to the end of the lake to go fishing and was wearing hip boots and took his life jacket off, and he walked. And so, what Jamie was describing there is it's a delta that feeds. So the river dumps out into the lake, and right where it dumps into the lake is 500 feet deep. So the river current is pushing out, and the whole delta is built of glacier silt, which is a super fine sand type thing. And so if you walk to the very edge, what happens is, you're in knee deep water and it feels fine. But then if you get to the very edge, it goes straight down, and the edge can actually collapse. So because it's just this really fine silt, so it kind of just collapses like it's made out of sand. Meanwhile, the water's pushing you out into the lake, and if you're wearing hip boots with no life jacket, or even maybe with a life jacket with hip boots, you're pretty much screwed. So unfortunately, that happened. Probably this must have been 20 plus years ago. But one of our employees went down there on his day off, and nobody ever found him, and that was everyone's best guess of what happened.
It still stresses me out, like hearing it. When you were telling me the story, I felt stressed about it. I feel stressed hearing him say it again right now.
The good thing he doesn't put us in, he puts a life jacket on us.
We try to really put the fear in people on that one because of how, that one it's really unexpected, and it's one of those things, if you don't know any better, you just walk right out to the end, but it can put you in a really bad situation. Plus, once you get dunked in cold water, and I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but it takes your wind out of your lungs, and, it's hard to stay calm, and your breathing becomes so shallow that it's hard to do anything. I mean, it's an amazing feeling if you ever had it happen to you.
I did, dude. I tried to get,
I'm not that far from the shore, I can swim, and you can't.
Well, we did, and we tried to get you to skinny dip with us, but we couldn't get you in the water that day.
How many of you guys jumped in?
Just 3, but it was glorious for the 3 of us.
Yeah. Well, I've been in there before, and I know what it feels like. It's kind of glorious, but it's also kind of miserable.
So, Matt, you talked a little bit about, you're being out in this remote place, and, how magical it is. Have you ever been in a situation where you have to use your, survival skills or skills that, you're a tough situation that you have to figure your way out because there's nobody to help?
Yeah, there has been quite a few situations like that. Mainly, I think snow machining is where I run into the most serious problems because a lot of what I'm doing is by myself. And what you do is you jump on these snow machines, and nowadays they're unbelievable. And also, when I say snow machine, I guess, most people call them snowmobiles. But so they're just incredibly, efficient at covering long distances. All that thick brush that you see when you're up here in the summertime, that's all completely covered. So you can just go right over the top of that. So, we can go, you guys met Dave when you were up here, I think, but, Dave was up here the other day, and we did a 40-mile loop in a couple hours. You can just cover ground very easy, and obviously it's winter, so the conditions are a little more extreme. But if you have issues where your snow machine breaks down or you get it really stuck and can't get it out, a lot of those places, it's like you're not walking back from there. When you're in 4 or 5 feet of snow, there's no walking out. So when I go by myself long distances, I usually bring snowshoes and, just some kind of basic survival gear. And one thing that kind of stands out that just happened actually a couple weeks ago is I have a messed up wrist right now. And, me and Dave were riding around. Did you guys meet David Bacon?
Yeah.
Yep.
He's the one who told me not to step off the cliff at the Delta.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. So Dave was up here, and we went snow machining up kind of at the end of the lake and up in those mountains, and it was a weird crust layer. And so I'll make it kind of a brief story. I basically dropped off a little ledge, and the snow machine came to a dead stop on a steep downhill, and I flipped over the handlebars and ended up face down in the snow with my head pointed downhill, and the snow machine ran me over, and which didn't hurt at all, but the snow machine ended up parking directly on top of me, and I'm face down, downhill pointed in the snow, and I literally could not move a single muscle in my body. I've never felt so helpless. I really couldn't even wiggle anything. So luckily in that scenario, Dave was there. And so Dave saw the whole thing happen, and he thought I was unconscious because he just saw the hard crash and then didn't see me move. And so he snow machined up there, and, luckily it was him because it was actually kind of a little bit of a difficult place to even get to. So luckily Dave is also a really good rider, and he knows how to get around. But so he ripped up there, and he tried kind of pushing the snow machine, and it was just pushing my face farther down into the snow, and all I could see was just darkness. I was face down in the snow, and eventually he was able to kind of roll it off of me. But it was just a scary situation, and it's one of those things where it was kind of eye-opening to me because if Dave wasn't there, I don't know if I could have gotten out.
Well, it's good to have a friend like Dave.
Yeah, it is. It's always good to be with somebody up there, but that's one of the downfalls of being up here. I live up here with Emily, and she's great and likes to go do lots of stuff with me, but some of the more, intense snow machining we do, she doesn't really want to have anything to do with. So it is always good to have somebody else capable with you.
What was going through your head when you were stuck and couldn't move?
I was really just kind of trying to focus on staying calm, and I would compare it a lot to getting buried in an avalanche where, you can't move, you can't, you're basically at some point going to run out of air. But luckily where I was, I had my snow machine helmet, which kind of put like a big empty cavity around my face. So, it wasn't like I had snow pressing up in my mouth or nose. But yeah, I was just trying to stay calm, and, I could still hear, so I could hear Dave riding up, and when I heard him actually get close and shut the snow machine down and talk to me, that was very like a relieving feeling, And I actually also had a backpack on that was full of beers, and that was part of the problem because the snow machine was pushing on the back of my backpack, so it was just every time I wiggled or tried to wiggle, it was basically just pushing my face farther and farther down into the snow. So when Dave tried to push the snow machine, he was running into the same thing. And so I was able to talk to him, just locked in the snow. I was like, Dave, just roll it off me. And so he was able to do that. But yeah, there's just a lot of kind of experiences like that happen up here. And you're really on your own. That's the thing. It's extreme conditions, extreme cold, and just a lot of other kind of extreme conditions up here, steep mountains, stuff like that. And a lot of times you're by yourself. So
I think it's going to be
anyone to rescue you a lot of times.
The backpack of beer is going to be a good transition. But before I tell that next story and ask, have you been trapped in an avalanche? You just kind of skimmed over that, but referenced it as if you have. Has that happened to you too?
No. I have not. I have lost friends to avalanches. It's kind of it's something I'm terrified of. I think about it a lot, just being up in the mountains, and but I've lost friends. I know a lot of people who have been kind of like temporarily buried in small slough slides, and it's just it's got to be kind of a shitty way to go, because you're basically locked in there, and you run. I think it depends on the slide and where you are, but you're going to run out of air at some point. So you're kind of just in there, and that feeling like what I had, where I honestly couldn't even wiggle my arm. So it's not like you're going to be able to dig out of that snow. It's like you almost got poured in concrete. Wow. And you just have to sit there, and you got to, I think, anywhere from probably 2 to 25 minutes, depending on how the snow conditions are, before you run out of air. And a lot of times that's too fast for anybody to get you out. So we snowboard and ride with avalanche backpacks that have big airbags. And so if you actually are capable, if you get in a slide and, things aren't looking good, you pull it and it just pops this huge airbag on your back. And, the idea is that it's kind of like a gold pan, where the heavy stuff settles and the less dense stuff ends up on top. And so with the airbag, theoretically, if everything's kind of shaking downhill, more times than not, you're going to end up on top of the snow rather than buried down 20 or 30 feet. And then we also carry, we're always, when we're up in the mountains, we're always wearing avalanche beacons, and everybody carries a beacon probe shovel. So the beacon is to basically pinpoint where you are, and then the probe is like this long collapsible pole that's, I think mine's 14 feet. And so once you find out where they are, they still could be, 8 feet down. So you use that probe to kind of stab into the snow until you hit something solid. And then you want to get out your shovel, and you want it to be a good shovel, like a good pack shovel, so you can actually dig fast, because it's all about time. But
How do you?
So yeah, never been in an avalanche, thankfully.
Matt, how do you? I know that you talked about this experience, but how do you overcome fear? Fear in general. Being out in such a remote place, like it seems like fear would be there all the time.
Yeah, I wouldn't really say it's fear. It's kind of more like when you're up here, there's just so much cool stuff to do that, I think it's easy to get kind of almost sucked in the other direction, where you're not thinking about the consequences. I think that's honestly more common is, you get up in the mountains and the snow's deep, and, it's like, well, yeah, I can snowboard that. Like, and, before you even really think, like, well, should I snowboard that? Because this whole mountain is unstable right now. The snowpack's not good. Or anything like, maybe we're going too far from the lodge and we're kind of pushing it, and it's like, well, if our sleds break down now, we're screwed. So, I've actually, if anything, I'm trying to be, and maybe as I get older, I try to kind of listen to the back of my head a little more about like, hey, like it really would be fun to go snowboard that mountain right now, but maybe you shouldn't. Or, go fly up to this spot and go fishing or something, but maybe you shouldn't do that, because, you got to have backup plans.
Well, ever since we visited the lodge, I've had a question I wanted to ask you, and I'll ask it through the experience. So that same day we took the helicopter around that moose, we get back to the lodge at the end of the day. You put on an amazing happy hour. I think we had moose sliders that day, which might have been one of the best things I've ever eaten in my life. It was so good. So I was probably eating another moose slider while you're out on the deck, and I get a beer or wine or something like that, and I'm the last guy to come out. And you all are in an in-depth story about how that moose moved down the hill and how Dave had a tag, and you guys are going to go moose hunting that night. And you carry on that story for probably 10 minutes or more. And finally, I'm at the edge looking out for this moose, which is probably fictitious at this point. And somebody hands me a pair of binoculars to find them. And I realized I'd been iced by the most in-depth icing mechanism ever, where they were wrapped in duct tape and they were taped together, and there was a binocular strap, and I was forced to drop to a knee and not slam one, but two Smirnoff ices. And that was a culmination of watching you and the guides ice each other for a couple days before you decided to target one of us. where did icing come from, and why on earth do you make people go through that?
So it definitely didn't come from Alaska, or didn't come from us. I don't even really know the origins of it, but I'm pretty sure it's like a college frat thing that actually one of my buddies, Josh, for some reason, I don't know where he came. He didn't go to college, but he all of a sudden started this trend to icing people. And I thought it was so stupid at first, but it turns out it's actually a hilarious game. But, the idea is you have to creatively hide an ice, and if you get somebody to pick it up or, just stumble across it, they have to, no matter what time of day or where they are, you have to get down on one knee and chug it, the entire thing in one sip. But yeah, I do remember that, the binoculars. it was 2 Smirnoff ices with a Sharpie in the middle, duct taped together, and then I spray painted them black. It actually looked a lot like a pair of binoculars.
No, it totally did. I mean, you went through some work to put that one together.
Yeah, that's right. That reminds me too. Did we ever get you guys with the lion roar?
Ooh, the lion? No. We played a lot of hockey on the last night, but I don't think there were lion roars. Okay,
so the lion roar is we got this Bluetooth speaker that it's this huge box. It looks like a amplifier for a guitar or something. It's super loud, and it's Bluetooth. So we, to the right people, has to be to the right people. We'll go hide it in the bushes. And then I downloaded a lion roar on my phone, and so you wait till they walk past it and you hit it. It just scares the shit out of people. It's extremely loud. But I'm kind of surprised. I wonder why we never did that to your group, because you guys would have been the perfect crew for that.
Maybe you weren't on the Amazon overnight stop yet, and now that you are, you were able to just order it.
That's possible. It's very possible.
We're gonna have to do that next time. So speaking of different groups that come up, is there a certain something that you witness that when groups come there that they feel connected to, or that they change, or that they experience that you kind of find a common thread?
Yeah, common theme would really be kind of tough, because I feel like each group that comes up here, obviously everyone's different. And we also really cater to the group. So, right when they show up, we're kind of trying to size them up and figure out, for example, there's a lot of people that we would never ice or lion roar, probably 90% of our guests we wouldn't do that to. Yeah, it really, it varies so much. Some people want to just go bird watching the whole time. Some people want to go fly fishing the whole time. I think, people just really love getting down on the river and kind of having it all to themselves. I would say that's kind of something that a lot of people probably, the most common one that people don't forget is going downriver and, just kind of being on their own schedule. And our guides usually kind of give you some freedom too. They're not sitting there breathing down your neck, telling you set, tie that, do this. It's kind of like, okay, this is how you do it. Now just get out there and get in the river and experience, and don't forget to look around from time to time and just take in the view.
Well, I'll have to say, I had never fly fished before I came up there. And because we were there with Matt and some other guys that were very experienced fly fishermen, I felt insecure about it. It was like a state of vulnerability, if you will. And we took the helicopter downriver ways to this beautiful area, and Dave was great. I mean, he was helping me tie stuff up, cueing me in on where I needed to cast, showing me how the fly rod worked. And the very first day I was out there, I caught 17 trout, and it's just so exhilarating pulling a fish in on a fly rod. If you haven't experienced it, it's something just hard to explain, but it's totally different than a normal rod and reel or open face,
Yeah, I think I really...
It's way more involved. I can't tell you how many times people come up here and they tell me beforehand, hey, we're not really interested in fly fishing, or, we're spin fishermen and we kind of want to stick with that. And it's very rare that somebody, continues to spin fish once they pick up the fly rod for a couple minutes. Almost everybody falls in love. And like you said, just dragging the fish out of the river with it is way more involved. You can't just drag him out. You got to actually read what he's doing, fight him. You can feel it way more in the rod. And then even just when you're not catching fish on a fly rod, like the art of the presentation is way more involved than a spin fish, just where you basically toss it out and reel it back. There's so much more to it, and it's way more, you have to pay way closer attention to how the river's flowing, because there's a lot of factors to get the fly to the perfect spot. And, you really have to be able to read the river and kind of understand where the trout are going to be.
Well, I know, I really feel connected to your comment about how you tailor the experience to the groups that are coming, because it really felt like you tailored our experience to exactly, we didn't know what we were looking for, but we really felt like
we found it.
We found it, and we felt connected to nature, and the guides were all, amazing, and really made us feel really comfortable. Is that something that, you guys get together with before we get there, or as we're there? Are you, kind of tailoring it as you go, or how does that, what's your thought process and plan around that?
Yeah, so usually we have a little meeting before everybody gets there, but it's very, I guess I don't really have much information at that point, because I talked to Jamie on the phone a couple times, and he explained to me kind of the group, but, it's just really hard to read people until they actually show up. And then, once everybody shows up and, usually after the first day, we kind of have like a debrief and, like, hey, this group's awesome. They kind of seem more like they want to do this rather than this. So yeah, I think, there always is kind of a plan when everybody shows up, and then, that's very subject to change. And it almost always does after the first day, because, it's, you can tell a lot more after you've got to hang around somebody for a day versus just talk to them on the phone a couple times.
Well, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find bigger fans and advocates than Gabe or myself. You had to weather COVID last summer. I assume that, I hadn't talked to you about it, but I assume that was a slower season because of it. And if that's the case, what's the state right now? We want to make sure that we do everything we can to promote the lodge and you, and I guess Alaska in general. What's the state of Alaska and what you see happening over the next few months up there?
Yeah. So, last year was brutal for me, for pretty much everybody in tourism up here. It was a tough year, and I think not just up here. I'm sure, people everywhere felt the impact, especially, one of the big industries was tourism, got hit big time. So last year was really tough to swallow. I still opened up. I made the decision to open, but we kept everything way smaller. I had a smaller crew. We didn't take so many people at a time. And, it was pretty much work twice as hard to break even kind of year. So that was rough. There were a lot of things that I would have liked to have gotten some money so I could invest back into the lodge, because everything up here is aging, the boat motors, everything. You constantly have to revamp the fleet of everything. But the good news is this year is looking, it's looking exceptional. And I think it's not just for me, it's for pretty much everybody I've talked to. Everyone says that, like, even recently, like the past probably 6 weeks, it's just been blowing up. Like people are turning business away right now like crazy, because it's just getting so jammed up. I've actually had to turn a couple people away this year already. I still do have a lot of availability for August and September, but at the rate everything's going, I expect I'll basically be fully booked this summer.
Oh, that's great
and
to
that's
hear.
That's a pretty nice thing to feel after last summer. So,
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'd encourage everybody to get up here now. I think a lot of these people are still feeling the pain from last year. And, Nick, one of my good buddies who owns Regal, and, I actually know quite a few other friends that own air taxis. And, them in particular, they just have such high costs no matter what. I mean, and so does the lodge, but to keep a fleet of airplanes maintained that's a lot of money. And with last year, it was pretty brutal on a lot of them. I actually think Nick did decent for different reasons, but he ended up getting a lot of charter flights because one of the main air carriers up here shut down. So, but anyway, that's beside the point. So yeah, last year was miserable for everybody. This year is looking to be really good, so that's great. But I certainly always appreciate any promotion for the lodge, and I'm hoping to get fully booked this year, and hopefully every year after that. That's the dream.
So besides fully booked, and I can see why you'll be fully booked, because once people go and experience it, they tell all their friends, and everybody wants to, have the once in a lifetime experience. What's the future look like for the lodge? Anything new coming up, or added experiences, or ideas that you have?
Well, the winter is something I have always been kind of interested in tackling a little more. And I have been opening up for snowmobile Northern Lights tours. And so that's kind of a new thing that we're kind of just getting into, and we kind of were just getting into it, and then COVID happened and everything. So we're still kind of in the beginning stages of that. But, I would say I really am not trying to do too much changes. I don't want to turn this into the typical resort where, I might be able to flood more people through here and make some more money, but it's going to change and become less of a, original experience. So the one thing, though, that is kind of my dream, and it's on my back burner right now, is I really want to bring a helicopter in full time. So I'd like to have a helicopter here for summer activities, and that's the stuff that you guys experienced. Along with, it gives me the opportunity for a lot of other cool things like rafting. We can do a day raft trip down Lake Creek and then just helicopter sling everything back. Which helicopter sling is like where you use a net and a long line and you actually just sling it like 150 feet below the helicopter. And so that's the dream. And then, I also would really like to get into ultimately heli ski and heli snowboarding up here. And, I got everything as far as locations. I got it here. I mean, it's unbelievable that the only reason I'm kind of skeptical is because I feel like I have this like winter wonderland up here with just unreal snow and nobody's up here. So I kind of spoiled where I have this huge untracked playground where nobody else is around and I get first tracks on everything, but definitely would like to get into heli skiing, heli snowboarding. I don't know, this upcoming winter is probably not realistic, but certainly by the following winter, that's kind of where I think I'm headed.
Matt, what I think I hear is you asking us to beta test your Northern Lights this winter, and for us to beta test your heli skiing next winter. And if you could see Gabe and I's face, we're both committed. We will come up and help you beta test that and flush it out.
I'm glad you can read between the lines. That's exactly what I'm looking for. You guys would love it in the winter. It's really it's an amazing place. Obviously in the summer too, but in the winter time, it's I think it's really, for a lot of people, it's like being on a foreign planet. Like, it's just a completely different world. We got Northern Lights going. I've seen Northern Lights every night for the last week straight. And with the snow on top covering all the alders, you can just go anywhere. Like, in the summertime to cover ground, like if you want to go on a hike, it's really tough to cover any distance or, any serious distance because the brush is so thick. But in the winter, on a snow machine on top of it all, I mean, you can do, no problem, you could do a 100-mile loop in a day. And then that's breaking trail, like not even following a trail. You just go wherever you want to go. So, you guys would love it up here in the winter. You should definitely try to make that happen. That'd be great.
There's no try about it. We're coming. Yeah. Let's go up there this winter. We're in, Matt. We're coming. All right, we're to the part of the segment where we're going to rapid fire you. All right. So first question is, would you prefer to be flying your plane or snow machining?
Oh, I think I would have to say snow machining.
Favorite season of the year?
Spring, March up here. It's like still winter basically, but it's the longer, warmer days.
Your drink of choice to accompany a moose slider?
Oh, a Coors Light probably.
If I couldn't live in Alaska, I would live here.
Probably Idaho or BC maybe.
If you could only pick one, would you be fly fishing or snowboarding?
Snowboarding.
2021 for Matt is going to be the year of
Helicopters.
All right.
All right. Yeah, we like that. Okay, so our podcast, part of what we want to give the audience is an understanding of what's special and unique about Matt and the Chelatna Lake Lodge. So what's the differentiating factor that makes the lodge experience with you so special and unique that you hear echoing through our voice?
Well, for the lodge, I would say it's the location. I mean, I could sit here and talk about how great the location is for hours, but, mainly we just have so many different options to do, everything right here on top of it all. That it's probably one of the prettiest views in the state. And then as far as tying myself into it, I think one thing that probably stands out versus a lot of other lodges is if you go to a lot of other nice lodges, the owner might kind of pop in for a few months or, a few weeks and kind of tell everyone what to do, and then go back to town and kind of live their regular city life. But, I live it up here, I with the hard parts and the cool parts, but I'm up here year round. So, I think people seem to enjoy to be able to kind of ask me the questions, similar to the questions you guys are asking me right now. But when they come up to the lodge and we all sit down for dinner, people find that pretty interesting to learn a little more in depth about the area than what they might experience somewhere else where everyone's just a hired summer job.
We definitely experience that for sure.
So, and you get a lot of time during the winters, the long winters in Alaska, to have time for self-reflection. And I know that you're working a lot and you're working hard even, during the winter. But there's a lot of probably a time of, being alone or what have you learned or discovered about yourself that or the experience that you'd like to, tell yourself something that, from when you were 20 years ago?
Yeah, that's a deep question. One thing I'd say I'd learned about myself is I am very capable of living up here, and I feel like I get more out of life being up here and kind of, very involved in nature than I ever felt like I did, in college, going to bars, partying, all that kind of stuff, which is great, and I still love to do that from time to time, but, I'm happier here, and I'm capable. A lot of people, I think, would probably lose their mind up here, just with the solitude. But, I've done, even when Emily's not here, sometimes I've done, months just completely by myself where I don't even see another airplane for 4 weeks. I never talk to anybody other than over the phone or something. And then just, I haven't been back to town since November right now, and I certainly don't miss it, honestly. So, yeah, I think I would just, that's the one thing I've learned up here is I'm happier, amongst this place than I think I would be in any city or town.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Well, that kind of concludes the segment here, but before we finish, is there a place that you would like to direct the audience who wants to learn more about Chelatna Lake Lodge? Yeah,
I mean, as far as how to look it up, the website is just chelatna.com, or you Google Chelatna Lake Lodge. We have Instagram, which is Alaska_Lodge. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's the question you were asking me, but feel free to jump on the website, shoot me an email or call me, and love it when people reach out and if you're, looking for a trip or even just have questions, feel free. I hope to see you guys again sometime soon. I looked through the calendar here and I don't see you guys anywhere on the summer for 2021. So maybe we can change that.
We're going to have to write that.
If nothing else, at least maybe next March.
All right. That sounds like a plan. We're definitely going to reach out to get on book.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. You better get on it quick because it's going fast.
I like it. That's good news, man. All right. Well, we appreciate your time, Matt. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really good talking to you guys, too. It's been a little while, and definitely keep in touch, and hope to hear back from you guys sometime soon.
Yeah, take care.
We will. Thanks, brother.